Welcome to another edition of the MSDW Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor of MSDynamicsWorld.com. This time, it's another week in review. We'll look at Dynamics 365 for operations on-premise news, new partner deals and acquisitions, new take on disaster recovery, integrating Amazon into your sales channel, and more. Joining me to chat about the week in the news is Dann Maurno, assistant editor. And hey, Dan, what do we have first?
Well, let's start with some Dynamics product news. First off, while Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations remains cloud-centric, local model broadens reach. And this was by you, Jason.
Yeah, so if there was one announcement since we last did a week in review, so maybe this would make it a 2 weeks in review here, but that was probably the biggest news in the Dynamics product landscape of the last couple of weeks. It was Microsoft's decision to officially broaden the Dynamics 365 for operations product out to sort of a full local business data option. They call it local business data I think they did that on purpose. They say to really just make it clear that it's all about keeping a company's local data local and out of the cloud. It sounds like the local model is their response to what I think was a significant amount of pressure from many different interested parties, and something maybe they didn't plan to do initially, but felt they had to do and have now done. And we had a second piece in relation, which was some partner reaction to the on-premise plans, the local plans, and it's very positive. Partners were very happy to hear it. I imagine that a lot of those very unhappy customers, existing AX customers who had been reacting since, the October, November 2016 timeframe about this, will feel a lot better as well, that they now have a path that they feel comfortable with. And Microsoft really changed their message, that they say they got the message that many companies still want an on-premise option where all their data is local. And they know there's different reasons for it, right? Whether it's investment in a data center, whether it's regulatory or, some other reason related to the industry they're in, or whatever the case may be, they know that a lot of companies want that, and they don't want to, sort of lose those companies as clients in the short to medium term. So yeah, that was the big one. And I think there's a lot more details to come on it. There's no licensing details yet. There's no pricing details other than to say that there will be both a subscription and a per license purchase option for it. But still a lot of details to come that Microsoft couldn't talk about yet. And it won't require Azure Stack, which had been which I don't think anyone was surprised by, but that had been the original plan for on-premise Dynamics 365 for operations, that it would run in Azure Stack. I think it might still run there when Azure Stack is out in the world as a general availability product, but I think the Dynamics team has sort of washed their hands of that Azure Stack stuff, and it'll just be sort of able to run on Windows 2016, SQL Server 2016. Those are the primary, running in a local or hosted data center. So that was the big news.
Yeah, and this is a theme that's going to turn up a couple of times this weekend. Next is, we know you're excited about the cloud, Microsoft. Guess what? We ain't. A few customers just
if you think back, the last big announcement, I think, if I'm not skipping back too far, was some of the details on CRM on-premise. So our Dynamics 365 Enterprise Edition customer experience apps on-premise, and some of the details on how that would work. And that's another one that will be on-premise. So it's sort of shaping up that those on-premise lovers will get, not the full glory of Dynamics 365, but they will get, the core of it in their local or privately hosted data center.
Sure. Next up, we have Microsoft partner Arbela completes acquisition of Integral USA, bolstering Dynamics 365 and AX service support.
Yeah, this one definitely caught my interest because, Arbela is a well-known North American Dynamics AX services firm with a lot of credibility and experience, and have really weathered many ups and downs in the Microsoft partner channel with Dynamics. And Integral US, I got to know a little bit last year because of the work that they were doing on something that I thought was interesting, which was the sort of a business model focused on services and support of AX systems using sort of a hybrid consulting / staffing approach ad hoc that really kind of brought a lot of different talents together, I think, for the team they had there, both in terms of that staffing knowledge and employing or engaging freelancers, and also sort of meeting the AX customers where they are and sort of understanding the gaps that traditional VARs leave in some of those service scenarios where companies don't opt for a service plan from a VAR, but they still need help, so they want to go pay as they go with with someone with less strings attached, and maybe even lower prices if you hire someone from who charges a lower fee if they could be from another country, but if they have the same knowledge. I think that's one of the ways that they sort of have appealed to people. So, I don't know exactly how Integral was faring, to be honest, if they were really on the rise or if they were looking to just be merged into somewhere else, whether it really gained momentum or not, I just don't know. But it was a very interesting model. I think Arbela will get that model. They'll get the people behind the Integral team who are making that work and who now have some really good experience with that unique service model. So an interesting pickup, probably not a surprise that a VAR would actually want to have that in their tool belt, that kind of model on top of, the traditional services packages that VARs tend to sell. So yeah, I thought it was a noteworthy one.
And the next up is an acquisition. This is Global Software acquires Globe, makers of Atlas reporting solutions.
Yeah, the naming on this one's a little hard to make sure you keep straight. So Global Software is a larger, more general firm that makes sort of Excel-based reporting tools. And Globe Software is a well-known reporting software firm that really has focused on the dynamic space for many years. And so Global bought Globe. Global themselves are actually a venture they're owned by private equity. So that acquisition sort of puts Globe and Atlas sort of in the hands of private equity, which is probably a good stabilizing factor for them and potentially broadens their reach if Global sees an opportunity to use that technology in their sort of broader marketplace. I also thought it was interesting just because it's another step in private equity's involvement in the Microsoft channel, especially with Dynamics partners. Another reporting and BI firm was recently picked up by private equity or by an investment firm, GRO Cap. So Target, the long-running BI firm based out of Denmark, was purchased by GRO Capital, which is pretty sure a Danish firm. And I know there have been other private equity investments in other firms as well. I think there might be some others in the BI space. I know, for example, Click Dimensions in the marketing automation space has had private equity investment, and others as well. I've had inquiries from private equity and investment firms, kind of who I know are just sort of scoping the overall market. So I mean, there's definitely that interest out there for these firms to pick up different ISVs that have technology that potentially could be of interest to them.
Yeah, it's starting to look a little like the clean tech or the green tech industry, in that all of a sudden there is this flurry, which tells you there's excitement, which is remarkable. And there's a bit of a proven model here.
The thing that I can definitely understand a little more strongly is the interest in picking up a Microsoft partner who's like a services firm who resells Microsoft technology. I think it's always a little riskier if you're an equity investor and you're looking to buy an ISV who sells sort of into or on top of a Microsoft technology, who sells on top of Dynamics. When you're selling an add-on to a Microsoft technology, there's always that risk that Microsoft could sort of eat up your market space and leave you kind of with not much to sell, kind of just gobble up your market. And so I'm always surprised a little bit now I think there's good reasons sometimes, and I don't know what the reasons were Global had for Globe, but I see both sides of it, and I'm always a little more interested when I see the ISVs get bought as opposed to the resellers.
Sure. Global Software acquires Globe. I'm reminded of a wedding I went to when an O'Donnell married an O'Connell. Why bother?
Well, that's it won't be too big of a transition, I suppose. These, perhaps Globe, I wonder which one came first and if they were already aware of each other, since their names are so similar and their solutions are really not that dissimilar. They both make Excel-based reporting that integrates with, databases, and so,
I'm sure they got
different tacks a little bit, but pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they got each other's phone calls for years. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Next, let's move on to some expert opinion pieces. These are guest columns, and for the most part. And the first one is the provocatively titled, "Oh No, Not Again, How a Second Global IT Outage Suggests Delta Airlines Still Has No Decent Disaster Recovery Strategy." This by Greg Pierce, Chief Cloud Officer of Concerto.
Yeah, so Greg had probably was one of the most sort of unique perspectives in the well-documented Delta Airlines outages. The first one was obviously, kind of catastrophic. The second one, I think, was still really bad, but maybe not quite as impactful on the overall the overall sort of air travel space. I just don't think it had quite as much of an impact, but he had the good fortune. So he's an executive at a company that does cloud, right? They sell cloud related services for IT, and he got caught in both of those as a traveler. So unlucky to him, but he got this interesting perspective. He saw it from the inside. He saw how this big multinational company with presumably big, complex, sophisticated IT systems tried to cope with a major outage, or two major outages really. And the first one was horrible and a disaster and major costs and expense and everything else. And the second one was almost just as bad from what he said. And it really made him wonder, what had they done for corrective actions? Had they mitigated anything really? I think his conclusion was they really didn't. So he has some suggestions on how to perhaps not follow in Delta's footsteps. And there, I should mention, there was a follow-up. He actually did a webcast for us that actually talked about a lot of those same issues. So, he might have suffered, but he got some fodder out of it for writing and presenting.
Indeed. Yeah, one thing about these airlines, you goof. I forget which one was it. Might have been, I won't even name them, but somebody goofed really big on Valentine's Day years ago, and they were known as the people who killed love. It was.
I actually remember. Actually, I used to be pretty impressed with Delta when I had a past job, traveled a lot, and I would travel through Atlanta almost every week there was a 8 or 10 month stretch at one point where I was traveling through the Delta terminal in Atlanta. And I remember thinking, this was maybe in 1999 or 2000, that they actually had some pretty cool sort of flat screen monitors with what looked like almost like a live feed of, status and in-flight sort of call lists and availability of first class and things. And it was sort of, I remember thinking it was pretty good for that point in time to have a very nice look and feel and that graphic design to it. And it seemed like pretty accurate data being popped up like very quickly, and made me think at that time, oh, Delta's, at the front, they've got all their ducks in a row technology wise. And, you come to see that they can suffer just as badly as anyone else.
They can indeed, yeah. I mean, it's a big, complex operation. It's a lot of, by its very nature, moving parts. Yeah. And things go wrong. Not just safety, but sheer business continuity. Anything less than 100% is unforgivable in that industry, alas.
I'd be shocked if there weren't some people departing that IT department after the second outage. It's a little hard to fathom how it can happen twice and the second one be as bad as it was.
Indeed. Next up is we had an executive Q&A, how a CRM firm grows and adapts in Microsoft's innovation ecosystem. And this was a Q&A with Power Objects Senior VP Jim Sheehan. And he described the company's journey with Microsoft Dynamics CRM from its 3.0 days, so pretty early. That was in about the 2007 timeframe, and the opportunity that Microsoft's relentless R&D engine has presented. Now, Power Objects was acquired, if you recall, by HCL in 2015, but they've absolutely kind of kept their identity as a CRM house. And Jim Sheehan says that today his, 100% of his profit and loss is CRM, and of course Dynamics 365. But as he describes it, the company really bet the farm on Dynamics CRM. They did this after a Sybase platform that the company was selling had kind of dried up or suffered attrition. So now they focus exclusively on CRM solutions and services. And again, they made that shift in about 2007. And by 2012, Jim says they were named the #1 Dynamics CRM partner in the world. So that's pretty quick turnaround. And even though it was a bit of a risky bet back then, Jim says it was a great product even back then. And founder Dean Jones and he thought, Microsoft just keeps investing and they want to do really well in this market. And they wanted to hitch themselves to a company that did show, enthusiasm for the product. And they've done that. And he says the pace of innovation in cloud and enterprise has been really exciting. And he points to, there's tremendous pace around Dynamics 365, but that's what makes them exciting. Another reason he says that that's so important is that it continues to bring people to the ecosystem, continues to make existing customers excited about staying on the software. And interesting, too, is they've gone with the changes in the licensing models and those updates. They moved from the SPLA type agreement to becoming a CSP. And finally, and I thought this was really exciting, Jim said that they just weren't growing as fast as they wanted. They saw the world, wanted the world, weren't getting there anytime quickly. And one thing that's important about that sort of relentless innovation as well is that it continues to bring more people into the ecosystem, continues to make existing customers excited about staying on the platforms. So Jim gives a lot of credit to Microsoft for the investment they've made. He does say, that this pace of innovation, Dynamics 365 in particular, caught them a little flat-footed and wish he had more warning, but alas. Now, another interesting thing is that they have evolved with the licensing models. They originally were, in the SPLA model of licensing and have moved to CSP. And finally, they've achieved about 100% growth under HCL, and they have begun expanding to the rest of the world, to Europe at this point, and they're looking at Asia and Latin America as well, among others. So, pretty interesting story. Dynamics CRM treated this company very well.
The thing I took away from it, a couple of notes in addition to what you mentioned. One was the fact that they have been able to continue, sort of have continuity in their own operations, even after being acquired by a major India-based firm, even though they're a North America-based firm, and seem to be able to do their own sort of carry out expansion that actually aligns with what they do, which is pretty great. And the other thing was that commitment to and focus on CRM and not being really distracted by anything too far away from that. You and I know, have even had some conversations about the idea of Dynamics 365 CRM capabilities versus the ERP capabilities, and sort of not to get ahead of ourselves and mixing them. Not us, but like anyone really trying to get ahead of ourselves and mixing those together and saying, oh, it's one unified system that does everything now. Well, not quite yet. I think the CRM, and I think you even asked Jim about this in the piece, which I thought was interesting, was the focus on CRM. Can it naturally expand to ERP? And I think his response was interesting. It's like, they probably could bring some of their own same methodology, same approach to people, same approach to services over to that, but that's not necessarily where they'll go. They could go in that direction, right?
Yeah, he did believe, what I asked him was, well, it seems to me that, okay, we've got this product, Dynamics 365. It is evolving such that CRM is attached to ERP. And are you now in the ERP business? And while we're at it, it seems to me every partner has to know Power BI, IoT, has to know Azure, all these things. They do to the extent that they need to, but CRM is absolutely their focus. And he credits HCL with allowing them to do that, not giving them the directive, okay, now you're expanding here. But HCL, of course, brings with it some legacy AX capability as well. So that sort of, I think, frees Power Objects to stay pure.
Yeah, Yeah, and good on them for finding an acquisition, an acquirer who allowed them to do that. Because I think it sounds like that's what they wanted, and they made sure that was part of the arrangement.
They did indeed. Next up is integrating Microsoft Dynamics ERP with Amazon. Don't discount the technical and tactical challenges. This was an interview with Western Computer's Greg Williams, who walked us through those challenges and practicalities. It turns out, Amazon is a ton of fun to shop on. It's really easy on you buyers. It's not a bag of toys for the sellers. There's a dizzying array of arrangements that you can make, seller and vendor arrangements that you can make with Amazon. And they are really, unless you go with the most basic arrangement, this is the type of thing where you do need the expertise of a company like Western Computer. How easy that integration is, again, depends upon the vendor or the seller relationship you choose. It can be as simple as an EDI integration like any other, or it can be a more complex one that requires you to use Amazon's API. And another thing to think about, too, and this particularly hits Dynamics Nav shops, is suddenly, if you're a company that's used to shipping pallet loads, now you're finding yourself shipping same-day one-off orders, and that is quite an adjustment. And interestingly, Williams pointed out that a lot of companies find themselves on Amazon by surprise. They haven't listed themselves on Amazon, but one of their retail customers may decide, hey, I can list this on there and sell it that way, and then all of a sudden you're fielding requests to ship a product to an Amazon customer. And by the way, you've got till the end of today. So surprise. And
you're on Amazon.
Yeah. And isn't that great? We're selling tons. And And a lot of times too, a sales team or a management team suddenly gets the ingenious idea to list on Amazon, and they don't tell the people in IT or order for fulfillment. And what this leaves you doing is then having to log out of the Amazon portal, download your orders, key them into your ERP, and it can be quite a challenge. However, there are companies out there like Western who have blazed this trail many times. And as Williams puts it, we can help you pick the relationship that makes the most sense to you, that's going to work for your, first off, for the type of selling you want to do, but also the capacity you can realistically manage.
It's one of those amazing scenarios where a company is big in, Amazon, they're so massive that they can demand these things that so few companies could demand of a vendor or distributor or a seller is to jump through some really significant hoops to do business with them, depending on how deep they want to go.
Yeah. And something Williams pointed out just to demonstrate their power is that Amazon decided a few weeks ago it was going to get into the car parts business, and they're going to white label and sell car parts. And this immediately was a punch in the gut to Boys and ADAP and companies like that who produce their own parts. So that's how powerful they are. You can't help but wish they were a little more benevolent, but but that's their power.
Everything from white labeling products to 3PL, which I think you also mentioned in the piece, to basic sales integration to complex inventory integration. Yeah, it really is a whole range, and you can see why companies would not want to do it on their own if they really want to take a big bite out of it. It's serious work and serious integration.
Yeah. Next up is managing Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations, why the cloud calls out for managed services. This by Lasse Olsen, Director of Managed Services for Avanade.
Yeah, I wanted to call this piece out. It just went up a day or two ago, and it's in relation to a webcast Avanad's doing around their own managed services for Dynamics 365 for operations. And it's also something that people in the Dynamics space are going to be seeing more of, which is the case for managed service models around the Dynamics 365 cloud offerings. Especially, I think the operations, the AX7 solution is the one where there's really a lot of it, because the cloud considerations there are not trivial. And even though it's pretty much fits what the description of SaaS in many ways, in other ways, there's a lot of cloud architectural decisions because it's such a large, complex, sophisticated piece of enterprise software with so many moving parts to it and so many ways it can be deployed, that managed services really could make a lot of sense for various reasons. One is licensing, another is architecture and cloud resource utilization, which can be very costly if it's not done right, and also, user acceptance and user adoption and on and on. So I think we're going to see more of this. So I thought it was worth mentioning this piece because, obviously I'm a big service provider like Avanade is thinking about this, and I happen to know that others are too. I think we might have touched on it on the CRM side when I talked to TriBridge, quite a little ways back, and some of their plans I know involve new and unique ways of offering services to customers. And I'm sure we talked about just earlier today Arbela and their integral acquisition, which is not the same, but it still gets back to, I think, that idea of services and helping provide support to companies that buy these solutions. I mean, not everyone's going to take the same direction, but it's a major consideration still.
And it is not all things cloud do not mean all things easy, which certainly the channel has.
Or cheap.
Yeah.
Someone had a comment on the site this week, or actually several days ago, but Azure deployments, and especially for smaller companies that maybe use AX, when you get up off the floor after hearing how much it costs to have Dynamics 365 hosted by Microsoft, you quickly realize that local business data has a lot better value for the small and medium business. And I think that's going to be a major discussion point coming, for anyone who hasn't yet considered it, is cloud does not mean cheaper. It just means not in your data center.
You save it on the servers, but
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the spending is not no straight savings there, I think, in for a major system like that.
Sure. Next up, we have 4 expert articles from Scott Hamilton, author Scott Hamilton, who is known as the AX Solution Architect. Yeah,
so these 4 new pieces are related to a new book that Scott just released on master planning in manufacturing with Dynamics 365 for operations. It also relates to AX 2012 R3. I hope to get Scott with us either in a webcast or perhaps on a podcast at some point. I'm going to keep harassing him about that. I don't know if we'll make it happen, but this is a comprehensive new book that he has spent the last year working on, and he has an article up just kind of explaining what the book's all about, which I think is a very useful way to start. And then we have 3 pieces that went up this week about supply chain management, decision making, and master planning in manufacturing. So all worth checking out. It is a rich, information-packed read that I will not attempt to summarize in my own non-supply chain words here. But anyone who cares about AX and the future of AX supply chain capabilities really owes it to themselves to go and read those.
Yeah. Next up, let's move to partner news. We've got 3 items here. And I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Mintigo integrates predictive sales AI with Microsoft Dynamics 365. So,
this is a new entrant into the Dynamics 365 customer experience app, sort of ISV realm here, with a solution meant to provide predictive analytics for sales teams to, you might say, I haven't actually asked them directly, but it sort of touches on the same kind of sales productivity and sales adoption, sort of optimization, maybe you might say, area. Their products are Predictive Sales Coach. It is Predictive Sales Coach, which can sort of augment the view of customers and opportunities and prospects in CRM. And I think, as we noted in the piece, the product is sort of in competition, more or less, with another product that the Dynamics 365 team has an OEM arrangement with, which is Versium, which also does predictive analytics for sales. And then those are also in competition with all the other predictive AI tools and smart productivity tools that go along with that sort of augment Dynamics CRM. And we actually even wrote about another one of those this week, which made a short list for productivity apps. That was Kamiko, and there are even others. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that all these, and a lot of it's hard to argue with the promise that these different products all make. They all make good pitches about why you need them sort of in addition to standard CRM, right? I mean, there's a lot to be said for giving your sales organization sort of every possible tool to close those deals. And, I could very well imagine companies buying 2, 3 of these products and trying to use them all together because they all do something a little different. They all have a different take. And I don't think any one of them has really claimed the top spot in the market right now. So interesting to see where these go. Contigo, Versium, Kamiko, Toutapp, Kuvana is another one. So there's a lot of them out there, and they all have sort of an interesting role to play.
And finally, Sable 37 acquires stake in Payfield's payroll solution Zalari.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we are supposed to pronounce that. I believe I saw that maybe it's pronounced salary, like with an S, but they just got a little cute on the spelling. But yeah, so this was an acquisition that is in the Asia Pacific region, and I think they'll begin with markets in that space. But they apparently also have plans to enter the U.S. market later in 2017 with this payroll solution based on Dynamics 365 again. So I'll be interested to see how that progresses.
We should tell folks that whether it's Zalari or salary, it's spelled Xalari, so we couldn't possibly be expected to get that correct. Not our fault. How about next week? Let's move on, Jason. What stories do you have coming up?
All right. Well, I think one of the main things I'll be writing about next week is roadmap updates, hopefully, from Lisbon, Portugal during the Extreme 365 EMEA event, which is going to be held there. So hopefully, Dan will be connecting and maybe even internet connectivity permitting, maybe doing an on-site podcast reporting back from that event. I, in particular, am very interested to learn about the SMB apps in the CRM side of the world and what the latest update is there. So sales, marketing, will there be a customer service app? I think there will, and what the latest guidance is to partners.
Great. I will have a guest editorial I'm very excited about. It's from OneNext CEO Jeff Budge, and he'll be talking about future-proofing AX integrations for customers who are choosing to delay their Dynamics 365 migrations. I guess the idea here is staying put doesn't mean sitting still. How do you maximize? How do you kind of amplify your AX AX installation?
Yeah, there's a huge number of companies that are in that situation.
Yeah, increasingly, and the idea again is, how do we absolutely make the most of this? And they've still got faith in AX. AX is 100% real, and so that's going to be a pretty compelling piece. With we should also have, if we can reach them in time, a Q&A with SBS Group CEO Jim Bowman, and they're the professional cloud provider, and they have just been named an indirect cloud solution provider by Microsoft. Formerly, this is what you'd call a tier 2 distribution partner. So we'll be talking with Jim Bowman pretty much about his company's journey. So that's among other stories.
Yeah, great topics. Very timely. This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast or have a comment, drop us a line. Again, I'm Jason Gumpert. You can reach me by email at jgumpert@MSDynamicsWorld.com.
And I'm Dann Maurno, Assistant Editor at DM as in Matthew, AURN as in Nickel O at MSDynamicsWorld.com.
Thanks, Dan. And until next time, we're MS Dynamics World signing off.